a very popular story in the Bible, but I think it's apropos for what's going on today. When God came to Gideon, and by the way, he said, "Hey, courageous fella," because the word Gideon in Hebrew, it means fella. So, our God is real. So he said, "Hey, courageous fella, I'm going to deliver the Midianites into your hands. But I need you to do something. I need you to go down and get some more courageous men like you." So what did Gideon do? First of all, when he was called by God, it caught him off guard. He thought that God was joking with him. He said, "No way you calling me courageous, because I run from battles." But he was talking to Gideon, because God doesn't see you where you're standing right now. God sees you, what he sees in you, and sees you as he intends for you to be. So don't miss that. God sees you. God sees his child as he intends his child to be, not in the current state that you're in. So just chew on that for a few minutes. Think about that for a few minutes. That is big time encouragement. So when Gideon was called, what did Gideon do? He went out and got 10,000 men. And God said, I don't think you're hearing me. He said, "I'm going to deliver the Midianites into your hands, but it's going to be me that delivers them. 10,000 is too many. You're not going to see that was me that delivered them into your hands. You're going to think that was something that y'all, the 10,000, one of y'all did." So Gideon goes back out, and he comes back with over 1,000 men. God said, "I don't think you're hearing me, son." He said, "See, I don't need that many men. So I tell you what I'm going to do." He gave him some direction. God always gives you direction. When you get in a pickle, if you pray to God, he'll give you some direction. Most definitely. So he told Gideon, he said, "I tell you what, the men that you have in that boot camp, that you have trying out for this army, the ones who lap up water like dogs are the ones that you are going to recruit. Those are the ones that you need." Kind of odd, huh? God, but see, God knows everything. Because see, just think about what a dog does while it's drinking water or eating food. Always looking ahead, always ready for a fight. See, God knows everything. So he said, "Get the men that are ready." So it was 300. That's all. That's all God needed, was the 300. He really didn't even need them, but 300 men. And he delivered the Midianites into Gideon's and his army's hands. So that is the encouraging word for today. If you want to know where that is in the Bible, it's in Judges. I believe it starts with chapter 6 and goes through chapter 8 or 9, the story of Gideon, the story of Jeroboam. All right? So, I gave you that. I gave you a little bit of word of encouragement. I prayed for you. Now I'm going to go into the reading of Double Lines Revisited. And here we go. Detective Scott and Matthews arrive at the Dreyfus residence and pull up their inclined driveway. "Yeah, this is the house. Their last name is posted on the mailbox. This was a good little drive from the precinct. Brian says as he gets out of the passenger side, shuts the door, and adjusts his pants. Chris gets out of the driver's side and shuts his door. He noticed the curtain drawn back on the windows in the house. Chris tells Ryan, well, there is someone home as they approach the door. Ryan rings the doorbell, and almost immediately, a very attractive woman opens the door. Mrs. Dreyfus? Yes, I'm Mrs. Dreyfus. May I help you with something? Both Chris and Ryan look surprised. Mrs. Dreyfus looks very young. May we come in? I am Detective Scott, while Ryan pulls out his badge, and this is Detective Matthews. Chris pulls his badge out, and they both display them to Mrs. Dreyfus. Yes, come on in. What is this concerning? Mrs. Dreyfus asked. Ma'am, this is concerning your daughter Nancy. Mrs. Dreyfus interrupts. That is what I was afraid of. Is she in some kind of trouble? She has not been home in over 9 months, ever since she had a huge argument with her father and I over the ungrateful, good-for-nothing boyfriend of hers, Myron. Ma'am, Ryan interrupts, we are investigating a case, and I regretfully have to inform you, your daughter is dead. She was murdered. Mrs. Dreyfus falls to her knees and sobs uncontrollably and yells, No, not my daughter. Who did this to my beautiful baby? Was it Myron? Chris immediately reaches to pick her up and softly says, No, ma'am, it was not. No, ma'am, it was not Myron. Myron was murdered also. Mrs. Dreyfus picks up the phone and calls her husband and tells him he needs to come home immediately. Ryan picks up his cell phone, calls the precinct, and requests that the psychiatric counseling team arrive as soon as possible to the Dreyfus house for assistance in proper counseling and arrangement. Chris takes Mrs. Dreyfus by the hand and sits her in the chair, handing her a handkerchief out of his pocket. Ma'am, can we see Nancy's room? Ryan asked politely. We promise we will not touch anything. Mrs. Dreyfus, still crying, rises from the chair with Chris's help and leads them upstairs to the second floor. They walk down the hall and enters Nancy's room on the right. Mrs. Dreyfus is making unrecognizable sounds, and Chris realizes she is fading into shock. Chris then leads her to a chair in Nancy's room and sits her down gently. And Ryan looks intently at a picture of Nancy, her mom, and dad. He surmises that the picture was taken about a year earlier. He noticed Nancy in a blouse that had a peculiar symbol on the left side. Ryan writes something in his notepad. He grabs Mrs. Dreyfus's hand. Thank you very much, Mrs. Dreyfus. My heart goes out to you and your husband. I promise you that we will find who did this to your daughter. Would you two care for anything to drink? Mrs. Dreyfus asked softly, while nodding her head. I am okay now. Ryan and Chris both nod and say, yes, water will be fine. The three of them head back downstairs to the kitchen. While in the kitchen, Mrs. Dreyfus asks both Ryan and Chris, do you have any children? They both respond, no, ma'am. Softly, Mrs. Dreyfus reflects, this is not supposed to happen this way. My husband and I raised Nancy with love and understanding and did our best for her. My heart has been ripped out of my body. Mrs. Dreyfus breaks down and sobs uncontrollably again. Brian arrives at the Bronson Towers in a tuxedo with a very attractive young woman on his arm. She is dressed in a very long, glamorous cocktail dress. Brian approaches his dad and excitedly boasts, "Dad, this is my girl, Veronica, Miss Veronica Sutton." Brian's dad extends his hand. "I am so pleased to meet you, Miss Sutton. Are you of the Sutton's distribution, Suttons?" "Yes, I am," the tall, slender Veronica responds with a huge smile. Brian's dad begins to flirt. "You are just as attractive and gorgeous in person as you are on the TV." "That's my dad," Brian says. "Excuse me, Miss Beautiful, for a moment," Brian's dad says as he pulls Brian a few feet away. "She is hot. Why didn't you bring me one? She has to have some friends." Then he says, "I'm just kidding, son. Just kidding." Brian rolls his eyes at his father. Brian's dad, now businesslike, says, "Seriously now, let me talk to you, son. What is going on with you? I mean us lately. I'm beginning to think you don't care about your dad anymore." Brian retorts, "Dad, I just want to find my own way and do things my own way." Brian's dad interrupts. Hold up, son. I've always let you be your own man, ever since you turned 13. Brian interrupts. "Dad, that is what I'm talking about, right there. You're always over talking and interrupting me." His dad now angrily says, "I really don't want to discuss this right now. Not here anyway. Son, come see me tomorrow and we'll talk about your concerns. I don't want to ruin my party mood." That was a reading from Double Lines Revisited, written by, as a crime mystery, written by yours truly, American author Charles Sloan. As the plot thickens, again, I won't read the entire novel, for it is a crime mystery, and the Revisited, Double Lines Revisited, will be coming out the end of April, early May. And that'll be on Amazon all over the world, Amazon Kindle. Thank you for the internet. All right. Now, I have a riddle that it seems like either nobody cares or whatever the case may be, but I will continue to read this riddle until somebody answers and figures it out. What has roots that nobody sees, is taller than the trees. Up it goes, but yet it